the KMNN studios, this is the Kids Morning News Network.
Good morning, it's July 8th, 2024, the 190th day of the year. I'm Alex in the KMNN studio in New York. I hope you had a good 4th of July. You know, this is the time of year you may see bats out eating bugs in the evening. Thanks, bats. Some of them also do things like pollinate flowers and spread seeds around. They're pretty amazing, finding those little bugs using their radar and then swooping in to gobble them up. But it turns out there are even more cool things to like about bats. Researchers in England are developing teeny tiny tracking devices that are light enough for even a bat to wear. And they say bats actually have very active social lives. You could say they like to hang out with each other. Get it? They actually make a point of being friends with other bats. They even share food. Clever creatures, those bats. Hey, did you know that an Old English word for bat is flittermouse? I like that much better. Bring back the flittermouse. Flittermouses? Flittermice? Well, the 4th of July is traditionally when the hot dog eating contest is held at Coney Island in New York City. Hot dogs and the 4th just seem to go together. So I was wondering, where did hot dogs come from? Well, like a lot of things in history, there are different versions of who was the first person in the U.S. to sell a hot dog. But everyone agrees that the sausage part comes from Germany, where a sausage very much like a hot dog is called a Frankfurter, after the city of Frankfurt, even though the sausage itself was developed in Vienna. I don't know, very confusing. But here in America, Frankfurters popped up on, yes, Coney Island in the 1860s. That was right after the Civil War. A German immigrant named Charles Feltman had a business in New York selling pies from a cart, like a wagon that he pushed along on the Coney Island boardwalk. At that time, trains were pretty new, and they had a train that brought people from the middle of the city out to Coney Island in the summertime to help them beat the heat, kind of like the subways do today. Selling food was a good way to make money. Feltman figured out that people wanted something hot to eat. Remember, this is before fast food, obviously before hot dogs, so eating something hot while you were out at the beach was impossible for most people. So Feltman had a little grill installed on his cart and started selling his favorite sausages. He also had a little warming oven put on so he could serve the sausages on a roll. That wasn't how they did it in Germany, but it made sense on Coney Island, where his customers were walking along the boardwalk. People called the sausages Red Hots, and today you could say they kind of went viral. Before long, Feltman opened a restaurant. Then he took over a whole block on Coney Island. By the 1920s, when his sons were running the business, it was called the biggest restaurant in the world. They served millions of people every year. A lot of people worked there, too. And one of them was a Polish immigrant named Nathan. His job was slicing the rolls to put the hot dogs in. Well, Nathan decided to open his own restaurant a couple of blocks away and sell his own version of hot dogs for half the price. People at the time said the hot dogs themselves were very different. Some people liked Feldman's better, some people liked Nathan's better. But eventually, Nathan's put Feltman's out of business. And now, you can find Nathan's hot dogs pretty much everywhere. And they're the ones who sponsor the hot dog eating contest every 4th of July. But there's a twist to this story. A few years ago, someone tracked down Feltman's recipe and restarted the restaurant on Coney Island. It's not as big as Nathan's, yet. But these days you can, for the first time in decades, go to Coney Island and eat both Nathan's and Feltman's hot dogs. You can decide which one's better. But an even bigger question that no one seems to agree on, is a hot dog a sandwich? Time for today's riddle. I have a neck but no head. I have 2 arms, but no hands. What am I? I have a neck but no head. I have 2 arms but no hands. What am I? Give it the answer on Wednesday. The first hurricane of the season is coming ashore in Texas this morning. And if you don't want to hear about how hurricanes form, you can skip this part of the show. So what is a hurricane? Well, hurricanes form over tropical oceans. Those are the parts of the ocean near the equator. It's really hot. The sun beats down on the ocean all day and warms it up. When a low pressure area moves through that water, the warm air near the water rises, bringing moisture, which is evaporated seawater, with it. And that lowers the air pressure even more and makes even more air rush in from around it. Meanwhile, when the warm air gets up into the atmosphere, it cools down and it releases its moisture. It's actually really cool because when the air releases heat and moisture, it's releasing energy, like a battery letting its charge out into the air, which makes clouds and rain and adds more energy to the storm. The whole thing kind of feeds on itself. Now, hurricanes are huge, hundreds of miles across, so big that the edges spin at different speeds because they're so far apart, and that's why they rotate or spin. And get this, a single hurricane can be so powerful it can release enough energy to power the entire world. Well, maybe one day, instead of batteries or engines in our cars, we'll have little hurricanes. Well, obviously, in the weather today, that hurricane coming ashore in Texas on the eastern coast of Texas, it's expected to get weaker as the day goes along, and it'll turn into a tropical storm, but it's going to bring lots of rain inland as it does, and that will extend all the way up to the Great Lakes today. On the west coast, heat. The whole western part of the country, from Arizona and California right up to Washington State, will be very hot, but just east of that, in the mountains in Wyoming and Colorado, it'll be chilly, like in the 40s this morning, but that'll warm up too. All right, we're talking about a hurricane, so let's end with a poem today called Clouds. We don't know who wrote this. White sheep, on a blue hill. When the wind stops, you all stand still. When the wind blows, you walk away slow. White sheep, where do you go? Well, that's the show. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be back on Wednesday, and I hope you are too. From the KMNN Newsroom, this is Alex, signing off.